Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is February 17th, 2025. Welcome to the podcast. It is going to be a great week. And I want you to subscribe to my podcast and pass it along to someone else. And like I always say, this podcast is based on facts and details. So let's dig in. I want to talk about the U.S. government policy on optimism, why we should be politically happier. Now, I want to look at a couple of facts, and I want to talk about why I think that the mainstream media portraying the next 4 years as being dark, because they use that word dark, is just not true. And they are not reporting why we should be optimistic. All right, so here comes the first one. Identifying where we were overspending. That would be a reason to be optimistic. As you know, we are in a budget deficit in this country, and we were looking at more taxes. And it was hidden behind saying that you were going to go after the richest people. And I don't think that that's the way to tax voters in the first place. We are looking at, and you've seen it in the news, of the U.S. Investment Department, USAID. And I reported that 6 months ago, and I was absolutely right about that. The optimism that I'm talking about is that we need to look at agencies like this and figure out where we're spending the money and pull it back. Now, if we are violating the policy of a president, because the deficit is bigger than one president. And to actually have someone who's addressing it is refreshing. And the people who voted for the president, Trump, should be happy that something is finally going to happen. And the mainstream outlets are treating it like it's our darkest days. And here's what they're pivoting to. They show the poorest people in these countries, and you can read it online, you can watch it on the news, that they will go under if we're not giving them millions of dollars a year, even though these countries have governments. And I don't know what they're using it on, but they're definitely not using it on their own citizens. Optimism number 2, the power of a one-term president. Now, no one has said this, so hey, I'm saying it first. We have the advantage of a one-term president, and you should be optimistic that he will do what he said that he was going to do. And he hit the ground running. And like I said previously, if you watch the mainstream media outlets, they are coming after him, saying that in this case it's our job to pay everybody's bills, and that they will suffer if they don't get money from us. You have to look at the reason why he's doing it. And unfortunately, when you're watching news now, they don't give you all of the facts. And hey, guess what? That makes it good for someone like me to explain it to you. Right? Now, I've always said that maybe we need to change the Constitution so that a president serves for 6 years. That way, they can make the changes And they're not worried about, oh, well, and I've got to run for re-election, so I can't do this, I can't do that, etc. So that's something for us to think about. But we should be optimistic that if you voted for Donald Trump for president, that he's going to do exactly what he said. Now, the next one is I want to talk about South Africa and Sudan, right? Now, this one is a little harder to explain, so try to follow me here. So, we have values in the United States of America. That's what shapes our policy. Now, what we've been doing is we've been giving tons of money to places like South Africa and to the Sudan. Okay, so South Africa, and I did some research, we're giving them around $40 million a year. I don't really know why we're doing that because they seem to be pretty wealthy. Now, it might be one of those things where the U.S. aid is slipping them money for whatever causes that they're trying to do, like transgender and all of those types of things. I don't really know, but I suspect that's why. Now, the other one is Sudan, and I don't know if you know this or not, but Sudan and that whole region has been in civil war probably 15 or 20 years. Now, the policy of not giving countries money when their values differ from ours should make us optimistic from the perspective of it goes against our values. And a president needs to enforce our values. So I'm talking about South Africa, right? So what South Africa is doing is they are arbitrarily taking land away from the minority population. And no one has said a word about it. And the only person that said it is the current president, Donald Trump. Well, why do we care about that? We need to enforce our own policies. If the minority who was in charge decades ago was doing the same thing, we'd be outraged. So what's the difference? So the optimism of this is policy that is fair against South Africa, even though the people in power are black, and they seem to want to go against the white population, and that is wrong. And we need a leader in the White House who will point that out and say it has to be fair. So that is a clear indicator to character in my view. So that one is harder to explain the optimistic part of it, but in theory, we should be optimistic of a leader who follows our core values that one side can't be oppressed no matter what they look like. Now, the Sudan is interesting to me. We've pumped a lot of money in there, and the United Nations really hasn't done anything on that. And the U.S. aid folks have been pumping lots of money in there. Now, Americans don't mind giving money, so let me clear something up because they're acting like that the current president wants to just take all the money away and then let them do whatever. That's not true. We need to reduce the amount of aid, and also the people there have to be at peace. The governments are fighting each other, and until they quit fighting, okay, we don't really have any stake in it. We can't just give them money endlessly at the rates that we are currently doing. And if there is a famine, right, we need to make it rain. All I got to do is ask the Arabians how they are doing. So the optimism on this one is from the perspective that we have an administration who might even suggest something like that. Give them ideas, not necessarily money. Money in the wrong hands goes nowhere except for those elites in their country who have been getting it for at least 100 years, and their circle is small. We need optimism in government. And even though it's not a policy, this loom and doom that the mainstream media is putting out there is not fair, and it makes people distrust the government. It makes the perception of us, the United States, as bad people because we won't just give them money endlessly. And I keep saying money. We should be giving people ideas, not necessarily money. And we should be optimistic that the changes that someone has said who is in the Oval Office will happen. And also, we have to see what happens. We have to quit attacking every time someone says something. And when the other side gets in there, so when President Biden got elected, I waited to see what he would do. And he did some things, and now we see the outcome. Now you can criticize, say that it was wrong, dark days, whatever. But you have to be optimistic because that's contagious, and that makes the country a better place from the start. Let me know what you think. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Have a good day.